Longtime lurker, first-time poster. Danny and I have been together for 4 years, engaged for 1, with our wedding planned for October, just 2 months away. I am at a complete loss regarding my relationship and what's happening in my own home right now. 4 months ago, Danny's sister Vanessa finalized her divorce and asked to stay with us temporarily while getting back on her feet after selling her marital home. I had some reservations, but I understood that in Danny's Filipino-American family, supporting relatives through hardship is basically non-negotiable. It's a deeply important cultural value for her, and I wanted to respect that. Some relevant background. 6 months ago, I left my stable engineering job to start my own consulting firm. The business is growing, and I own our home outright from an inheritance, but I'm definitely having to watch cash flow carefully as things ramp up. Vanessa, on the other hand, works as a hospital administrator and pulls in a 6-figure salary. Despite this, she hasn't contributed a single dollar toward household expenses during her 4-month stay, with absolutely no apparent plans to leave. Last night, things finally reached a breaking point. I had just finished a 14-hour workday where I secured a potentially game-changing client for my business. I was exhausted but excited, and all I wanted was to come home, share the good news with Danny, and maybe celebrate a little. Instead, I walked into our living room to find Danny and Vanessa on the couch with takeout containers, wine bottles, and dessert boxes on the coffee table. This was their third sister's night this week. Danny barely looked up from the movie they were watching to acknowledge me, while Vanessa didn't acknowledge my presence, just continuing to look at her phone. "Hey, did you guys save any food for me?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light despite my growing frustration. Danny looked momentarily guilty before explaining, "Oh, we didn't think you'd be home until much later." I went to the kitchen to make myself something to eat, only to discover the refrigerator was nearly empty, except for condiments and Vanessa's special imported yogurt that I've been explicitly told not to touch. While making myself a sandwich, I overheard Vanessa telling Danny she'd invited 8 friends over for a pool party this Saturday. That would be fine, except Saturday is the exact day I had scheduled an important client meeting at our home. I'd mentioned this to both of them at least 3 times over the past week. When I entered the living room to bring up the scheduling conflict, Vanessa rolled her eyes and said, "It's just a few friends using the pool. Your little meeting can happen inside. No big deal." Before I could even respond, Danny jumped in suggesting I could just reschedule my meeting since Vanessa's friends had already confirmed they were coming. I stood there feeling like I was taking crazy pills. Later that night, after Vanessa had gone to bed, I tried to have a calm discussion with Danny about boundaries. I pointed out that Vanessa has been temporarily staying with us for 4 months with 0 contribution to the household despite her 6-figure salary. Danny immediately became defensive. "You don't understand how important family is in Filipino culture," she said, making me feel like the bad guy for even bringing it up. "Vanessa is going through a really tough time right now, and we need to support her. I can't believe you're being so selfish about this." I felt like I was being gaslit. I've been nothing but accommodating for 4 months. I've given up my office, my privacy, my space, and apparently now my say in what happens in my own home. And somehow I'm the selfish one for suggesting that maybe her fully employed sister could contribute something to the household, or at least respect our schedules. I'm lying awake now, wondering if I'm being unreasonable. Am I failing to respect Danny's cultural values? Am I being a bad future brother-in-law? But also, how much longer can I tolerate feeling like a stranger in my own home? The wedding is in 2 months, and this situation is making me seriously question things because I do love Danny so much. But I'm starting to wonder if this is a preview of our married life. Her family's needs always coming before ours, me having no say in my own home, and being made to feel selfish whenever I express a need or boundary. I guess what's most frustrating is that I thought Danny and I were partners, a team making decisions together. But increasingly it feels like Danny and Vanessa are the team, and I'm just the guy providing the housing and paying most of the bills. What really gets me is that Vanessa hasn't made any apparent effort to find her own place, despite having plenty of means to do so. She talks about house hunting occasionally, but always has some excuse for why the places she's seen aren't suitable. At this point, I'm starting to think she has no intention of leaving anytime soon. I've tried to be understanding about the cultural aspects here, but I'm reaching my breaking point. The constant presence of another person in our home is affecting our relationship. Danny and I hardly ever have private time anymore, and when we do, Conversations often revolve around Vanessa's needs or schedule. Our intimacy has taken a serious hit. The financial aspect is starting to weigh on me too. Our household expenses have nearly doubled with Vanessa here. She eats our food, uses our utilities, and has her friends over constantly, all while contributing nothing. With my business still in the growth phase, this additional financial strain is the last thing I need. I've tried dropping subtle hints about the situation, but they've gone nowhere. I suggested that since Vanessa is settled into her job now, maybe she could chip in for groceries or utilities. Danny immediately shot that down, saying it would be embarrassing to ask her sister for money. I'm also worried about the long-term implications here. What happens after the wedding? Will Vanessa stay? What about when we want to start a family? These are conversations Danny and I should be having, but whenever I try to bring them up, I'm made to feel like I'm being insensitive to her culture and family obligations. My friend Miguel says that while family support is important in Filipino culture, what's happening goes beyond cultural norms into something else entirely. He thinks Vanessa is taking advantage of both the situation and her cultural leverage over Danny. I feel stuck between respecting cultural differences and standing up for reasonable boundaries in my own home. The pool party situation feels like the final straw, but I don't know how to address it without causing a major rift with Danny right before our wedding. Yesterday, I found Vanessa had rearranged my home office to make room for her workspace without asking me. When I mentioned it to Danny, she just shrugged and said Vanessa needed somewhere quiet to take work calls sometimes. I'm starting to feel like I'm going crazy here. Am I overreacting to normal family dynamics? Am I being culturally insensitive? Or am I legitimately being pushed out of my own home by my future sister-in-law while my fiancé enables it? Part of me wants to just walk away from this whole situation, but I know that's not rational. Help me, Reddit. How do I navigate this cultural minefield without blowing up my relationship 2 months before our wedding? Now for the first update. I did not expect my post to blow up like that. Thank you all for the advice and support. I've been reading every comment and finally have the mental energy to share what's happened since. After our argument about Vanessa's pool party, I reluctantly rescheduled my client meeting. I hate to admit it, but I caved just to keep the peace. The meeting was critical for my business, but I moved it to 7 a.m. Saturday morning instead. Not ideal. What Vanessa described as a few friends using the pool turned into a large party with over 20 people. They were playing music until 2 a.m., despite my polite requests to wrap things up earlier since I had an early meeting. Every time I mentioned it, Vanessa would loudly announce to everyone that I was being a killjoy, and Danny would give me these pleading looks that basically said, "Please don't make a scene." So I retreated to our bedroom, put in earplugs, and tried to sleep through the noise in our backyard. Needless to say, I was exhausted for my 7 a.m. meeting, which went terribly. The client could tell I was running out of energy and said they'd think about it, which we all know is business speak for no thanks. Over the past 2 weeks, I've noticed Vanessa gradually moving more permanent items into our home. At first, it was just clothes and personal items you'd expect for a temporary stay. Now it's furniture pieces, artwork, and kitchen appliances. The most concerning development happened 3 days ago. I came home to find what was supposed to be our future nursery. Yes, we've been talking about kids, completely transformed into Vanessa's home office, with a new desk, bookshelves, and her diplomas hanging on the wall. When I asked about it, Danny said Vanessa needed a quiet place to work, and it made the most sense, since we weren't using the room yet anyway. The financial situation has gotten worse too. Our household expenses have nearly doubled since Vanessa moved in. She buys premium groceries, sets the AC to very low temperatures, takes 30-minute showers, and constantly runs loads of laundry with 2 items in them. Meanwhile, my business is still in its growth phase, and while it's going well, I'm not exactly making a lot of money yet. Yesterday, I overheard a conversation that made me very angry. I was coming back from the bathroom when I heard Vanessa in the kitchen telling Danny that I'm financially irresponsible for leaving my corporate job and that she should postpone our wedding until my business proves viable, her exact words. I didn't confront them because I was so stunned and, frankly, didn't want another argument. But the real breaking point came last night. I was sitting at the kitchen table reviewing our wedding expenses when I noticed several significant changes to our plans in handwriting I didn't recognize. Someone had added at least 30 guests to our originally modest list, upgraded the catering package, and there was a receipt for a deposit on a different venue than the one we'd chosen together. I found Danny and Vanessa in the backyard, surrounded by fabric swatches and Pinterest boards. They were discussing completely changing our wedding colors and decor from the blue and silver theme Danny and I had agreed on to some elaborate burgundy and gold setup that would require all new everything. When I asked what was going on, Vanessa immediately jumped in, doesn't she always, saying she was helping Danny create the wedding she deserves, rather than settling for less because of temporary money issues. The way she said temporary money issues with that dismissive tone made it clear what she thought of my business venture. Danny just sat there looking uncomfortable while Vanessa explained that our original wedding plans were embarrassingly small and that she'd offered to contribute financially to upgrade certain elements. Spoiler alert, this contribution wasn't what it seemed, as I'd soon find out. I reminded them that Danny and I had spent months planning our wedding together, and these changes were made without any discussion with me whatsoever. It's our wedding, not just Danny's, and certainly not Vanessa's. You know what Vanessa did then? She literally waved her hand dismissively at me and said to Danny, "See what I mean about control issues? This is exactly what happened with Brad before I finally left him." For context, Brad is her ex-husband, who I've met exactly twice and seemed like a perfectly reasonable guy. The comparison stunned me into silence. Danny suggested we postpone the discussion and that we could talk about it later, which effectively dismissed my concerns entirely. I stood there feeling extremely confused. How had I become the bad guy for wanting some say in my own wedding? That evening, after Vanessa retreated to the guest room, which is now basically her room, I tried to have a private conversation with Danny. I wanted to talk about Vanessa's troubling comments and the wedding changes, but Danny was completely evasive, checking her phone every 5 seconds and eventually accusing me of creating unnecessary tension in the house. When I gently asked when Vanessa might be planning to find her own place, "It's been 4 months of this temporary arrangement, folks," Danny revealed that she's been helping Vanessa financially with her divorce legal costs. She confessed that Vanessa wouldn't be able to move out for a while because of this financial assistance. I was confused because Vanessa makes a 6-figure salary while I'm bootstrapping a new business. Why would Vanessa need financial help? That's when Danny revealed she had given Vanessa over $15,000 from our joint savings account, including funds specifically set aside for our wedding and future home renovations. Let me be clear, Danny never consulted me about this. The money was just gone. When I expressed shock, Danny got defensive and said, "Family helps family. You know how important that is in my culture." Once again, my very reasonable concerns were dismissed as cultural insensitivity. For those asking in the comments of my last post, yes, we've had conversations about finances before. We agreed to maintain one joint account for shared expenses in our future together, while keeping separate personal accounts for individual spending. This $15 was from our joint account that was specifically for our wedding and home projects we'd planned together. As Danny fell asleep last night, I sat in our bathroom trying to make sense of everything. I'm starting to feel like I'm trapped in a situation where I have no say in my own home, my own finances, or even my own wedding. The woman I fell in love with, the one who used to make decisions with me as a team, seems to have been replaced by someone who defers to her sister on everything important. I'm especially troubled by how Vanessa constantly compares me to her ex-husband. It feels like she's trying to create parallels that don't exist, projecting her failed marriage onto our relationship. And what really disturbs me is that Danny seems to be buying into it. Several of you suggested in my last post that Vanessa might be deliberately trying to create distance between us, and I'm starting to think you might be right. The constant undermining, the financial sabotage, the wedding changes, it all feels intentional now. I love Danny, I really do, but I'm wondering if our relationship can survive Vanessa's influence, especially as Danny seems increasingly distant and aligned with her sister rather than with me. The wedding is now just 6 weeks away, and I honestly don't know what to do. I've thought about postponing the wedding, but I worry that's exactly what Vanessa wants. I've considered moving out temporarily to give everyone space, but I'm concerned that would just solidify whatever narrative Vanessa is spinning about me. I'm stuck between protecting my relationship and protecting myself. Thanks for reading this far. Seriously, you deserve a medal for sticking with my drama. I'm going to take some time to process all your advice. I have a feeling things will reach a critical point soon, and I'll update when I have more to share. Now for the second update. Update 2. Well, So much has happened in the past 2 weeks that I've been struggling to find the mental energy to post, thanks to those who DM'd checking in on me. For those just joining this nightmare, links to my original post and first update are in my profile, but things have gotten so much worse. After discovering Danny had given Vanessa $15,000 from our joint savings without discussing it with me, I tried to give myself some space to process everything. I spent more time at my office and crashed at my friend Miguel's place for a couple nights. Don't worry, I told Danny where I was. I'm not that petty. When I came back, I was hoping things might have settled a bit, but instead the situation had somehow deteriorated even further. Last Sunday, we had dinner with Danny's parents and her cousin's family. What I thought would be a nice family gathering turned into yet another opportunity for Vanessa to undermine me. Throughout the entire meal, she kept making these concerned comments about my business decisions. It's just so brave of him to leave a stable engineering position in this economy, and I just hope he can provide Danny with the security she deserves, all said. I stayed quiet during dinner, not trying to cause drama in front of the family, but it was obvious what she was doing. They've always been supportive of my career change, but now I could see doubt creeping in. Vanessa was effectively poisoning my relationship with my future in-laws one dinner at a time. Here's the kicker. A mutual friend who works in real estate told me yesterday that Vanessa has actually been apartment hunting for weeks. Apparently, she's toured 3 perfectly good places, but turned them all down for ridiculous reasons like the kitchen backsplash isn't quite right, or the closet space is insufficient for my needs. She clearly has no intention of leaving anytime soon. The business front has been positive. I finally landed that major client I've been pursuing for months, a contract that basically guarantees financial stability for my company going forward. Suck it, Vanessa. I was so excited to celebrate with Danny. I called her right away and suggested we go to our favorite restaurant that night. Her response? "Oh, that's great, babe, but Vanessa and I already have appointments for pre-wedding beauty treatments. Can we celebrate tomorrow instead?" These treatments weren't in our wedding budget, and when I later saw the credit card statement, they cost nearly $600 for one session. Apparently there are more scheduled. That money was supposed to go toward our honeymoon. I've also noticed Danny using phrases that don't sound like her at all. Last week, she casually mentioned that we might need to reassess our timeline regarding the wedding. I've never heard her talk like that before, but it sounds exactly like something Vanessa would say. The most disturbing development came after I found several of my business documents rearranged in my home office. Nothing was missing, but papers that had been in one folder were now in another. My laptop had also been moved slightly from where I always keep it. At first, I thought maybe I was being paranoid, but something felt off. So I did something I'm not particularly proud of, and yes, I know many of you will say this was wrong. I installed a small security camera in the common areas of our house. Not in any bedrooms or bathrooms. I'm not a complete creep. Just the living room and my office area. I didn't tell Danny or Vanessa about it. Yesterday, I was supposedly at meetings all afternoon, but I actually finished early. Before heading home, I sat in my car and reviewed the security footage from earlier that day. There was Vanessa, sitting on our couch, talking to Danny about how I was inevitably going to fail in my business venture, and that Danny should protect herself with a prenup. She straight up told Danny that she's deliberately extended her stay because she doesn't trust me and wants to make sure Danny doesn't make the same mistake I did with Brad. The most infuriating part, Vanessa literally admitted she already rejected 2 apartment offers because she's not done yet, evaluating whether Danny should marry me at all. Who does that? She's essentially appointed herself as the judge of our relationship and is deliberately sabotaging us. I sat in my car for nearly 20 minutes, trying to calm down before going inside. I've never felt a mix of rage, vindication, and heartbreak all at once. At least now I know I'm not crazy. This woman has been actively trying to separate Danny and me. When I finally walked into the house, I found Danny and Vanessa huddled over our wedding guest list on the dining table. As I got closer, I noticed several names crossed off, mainly my friends and family members. "What's going on with the guest list?" I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral despite knowing exactly what was happening. Before Danny could even open her mouth, Vanessa jumped in. "Danny and I were just discussing how your college friends might make our family uncomfortable with their drinking habits. For context, my college friends are all successful professionals in their 30s. One of them doesn't even drink alcohol. This was a completely manufactured concern." Danny looked uncomfortable but added, "I was going to talk to you about it, but haven't had the chance." She wouldn't meet my eyes. Looking at the list more carefully, I noticed that for every friend of mine they'd crossed off, they'd added someone from Vanessa's circle. People I've never even met would be at my wedding, while my close friends would not. That was it. 4 months of this nonsense, and I just couldn't take it anymore. "Vanessa," I said, keeping my voice as calm as possible, "I think you need to find your own place within the next 2 weeks." She immediately burst into tears, the fakest crying I've ever witnessed, by the way. "You're throwing me out on the street," she wailed, turning to Danny. This is exactly what I was worried about all along. Danny immediately went to comfort her sister. "I can't believe you would make such a unilateral decision about my sister's living situation without discussing it with me first." I tried to explain that this was supposed to be a temporary arrangement that had stretched on for 4 months, that Vanessa makes more than enough money to afford her own place, and that our household has become completely dysfunctional. Danny cut me off mid-sentence. "If Vanessa has to leave, then maybe I should go with her until you figure out what's really important to you." And that's where things stand now. Danny has been sleeping in the guest room with Vanessa for the past 2 nights. They only communicate with me through brief texts about household stuff like taking out the trash or "we ordered dinner for ourselves." I feel like I'm the villain for wanting my house back and my fiancée to myself. I'm seriously considering showing Danny the security footage, but I'm worried that will just make things worse because I installed the camera without telling her. Edit. A lot of you are asking why I haven't shown Danny the footage yet. I get it might seem like the obvious move, but I'm terrified this could backfire. If she sides with Vanessa about me spying on them, that could end our relationship. I'm trying to find the right moment. But with them barely speaking to me right now, it's hard to have any meaningful conversation at all. I don't know what to do next. I love Danny, and until Vanessa showed up, we had a really solid relationship. Our wedding is supposed to be in less than a month, but at this rate, I'm not sure there will even be a wedding. I've called my friend Miguel, who is also Filipino-American, for advice, hoping he might have some cultural insights I'm missing. He's coming over tomorrow to talk, but he already said on the phone that while family support is absolutely important in Filipino culture, what Vanessa is doing goes far beyond cultural norms into straight-up manipulation. Thanks for letting me vent, Reddit. When I made my first post, I thought I was overreacting to a mildly annoying house guest. Now I'm fighting to save my relationship from someone who seems determined to destroy it. Any advice on how to approach Danny with the security footage would be appreciated. Trust me, I already know installing it without telling her wasn't my finest moment. Now for the final update. First off, massive thanks to everyone who's been following this absolute train wreck of a situation and offering advice. Seriously, you guys have been the only thing keeping me sane. It's been about 2 weeks since my last update, and I've been putting off writing this because I needed time to process everything that went down. So much has happened that I'm still trying to wrap my head around it all. Mini update before I continue. I got that major client contract officially signed and the first payment has already cleared, so at least my business is thriving while my personal life was imploding. Small victories, right? After I posted my last update, Miguel came over as planned. We sat in my car to talk privately. He listened to everything, including about the security footage, and his reaction was immediate. "Dude, this isn't normal, even by Filipino family standards. My mom would never let my sister pull this kind of manipulation." That was validating to hear. I'd been worried I was missing some cultural nuance that explained Vanessa's behavior and Danny's blind spot for it. Miguel pointed out that while yes, family is incredibly important in Filipino culture, what Vanessa was doing went way beyond cultural norms into straight-up sabotage. The next day, my business partner Chris noticed I seemed distracted during our client meetings. He pulled me aside afterward and basically forced me to grab lunch with him. I ended up telling him everything, including about the security footage that I still hadn't shown Danny. Chris got this serious look on his face and told me something I really needed to hear. "You need to have this conversation with Danny away from Vanessa's influence, somewhere neutral, before you make any decisions about your future." He then shared that his wife's mother had tried to sabotage their relationship before their wedding. He said the only thing that worked was getting his wife alone for a weekend away from her mom's influence. That night, I texted Danny asking if she'd meet me for dinner at Mariposa's. I said I wanted to talk about our future privately. She took nearly 3 hours to respond, but finally agreed to meet me the following evening. I spent the entire day rehearsing what I wanted to say. I needed to be honest about how hurt I was feeling without attacking her or her relationship with her sister. I also needed to decide whether to show her the footage. When we met at the restaurant, things were immediately awkward. For the first time in 4 years, we felt like strangers. We made small talk about the weather and work while ordering, but once our appetizers arrived, I couldn't delay the inevitable anymore. "I still love you, Danny," I started, "and I still want to marry you. But I'm really hurt by what's been happening. I feel like I'm being systematically pushed out of my own home and our wedding plans." She immediately started defending Vanessa, repeating the same talking points I'd heard for months about family obligations and my lack of understanding of her cultural values. I made a decision that could either save or end our relationship. "I have something I need to show you," I said, pulling out my tablet. I had queued up the security footage to the exact moment where Vanessa was sitting on our couch talking to her friend on the phone while Danny was out grocery shopping. I watched Danny's expression change as Vanessa said, "No, I'm not planning to move out anytime soon. He's such a pushover, and I make 6 figures while living here rent-free. Besides, I'm not done evaluating whether Danny should even marry him at all." The footage continued with Vanessa talking about using the culture card whenever I raised concerns and calling me an insecure loser who would never be successful in business. But the part that seemed to hit Danny hardest was when Vanessa said, "Danny could do so much better. I'm just helping her see that before she makes a huge mistake." Danny pushed the tablet away. "Why did you install cameras without telling me?" she asked. I knew something was off, but I thought I was going crazy, I admitted. I needed to confirm I wasn't imagining things. "I know it was wrong not to tell you, and I'm sorry for that." We sat in silence for a long time. Finally, Danny spoke. "Vanessa has always been jealous of my relationships," she confessed quietly. "Brad, her ex-husband, he actually told me once that Vanessa was trying to come between them too. I dismissed it at the time. I thought he was just being dramatic." On the drive home, we agreed that we needed to confront Vanessa together. No more triangulation, no more letting her play us against each other. We walked into the house and found Vanessa watching TV with a glass of wine. "We need to talk," Danny said. She placed my tablet on the coffee table and played the footage. Vanessa saw herself on screen and reacted. "That's obviously taken out of context," she said. "You've been spying on me in your home? That's illegal," she continued. "I was just looking out for you, Danny. I love you and don't want you to make my mistakes," and then broke down. "You don't understand what it's like," she said. "My marriage failed. I had to sell my house, and then I had to watch you planning your wedding with your fiancé in your house. Do you know how that feels?" Danny stood there and said, "You have 1 week to find your own place. I will always love you because you're my sister, but I will not allow you to damage the relationship that matters most to me." Vanessa left the guest room, slamming the door behind her. Danny collapsed into my arms. We held each other for almost an hour, not saying anything. The next morning, Vanessa was gone before we woke up. She left a note saying she was staying with a friend and would come back for her things later that week. She also transferred $5,000 to our joint account with the memo line, "Rent and expenses." We're postponing the wedding by 3 months, not because we're uncertain about getting married, but because we want to reset and rebuild our plans together. We're also starting couples counseling next week. As for Vanessa, she did come back for her things, but only when she knew I would be at work. Danny helped her load everything into a moving truck. Apparently, she found an apartment in the city near her job. They're not speaking much right now, but Danny hopes they can repair their relationship eventually, with much better boundaries. The house feels like home again. We've rearranged the furniture, repainted the guest room, and reclaimed the space that had been taken over. More importantly, we've started talking again. Really talking, not just coexisting. Edit. Several people have asked if I'm still mad at Danny for siding with Vanessa for so long. Honestly, I was at first, but I've come to understand how Vanessa manipulated her. She preyed on Danny's cultural values and sisterly loyalty, and she'd been doing it their entire lives. I'm just grateful Danny could see the truth when it was finally shown to her. I don't plan on posting about Vanessa again, but I wanted to thank everyone who encouraged me to document everything and communicate directly with Danny. You saved my relationship, and I'll be forever grateful to this community for your advice and support during one of the most challenging periods of my life.